the slice team that we have is a rights respecting steering group. So it's uh, a team of people who inform whole school practice at the
Right.
school. And so children have made decisions through their observations within the group that have then gone to inform um, whole school policy and practice. And it just seems so obvious to create an environment in which children are determining what happens at their school. And I'm a governor of a secondary school, and I often do the pupil voice, and first few minutes, these guys are looking at me as if, are you genuinely interested in asking if we feel safe? And why are you? And then what I do is I ask them at the end how they're feeling. They said, "Oh, we." I said, "What do you think I'm? What do you think I do? I'm a governor." They said, "Oh, you're the boss of the teachers." I said, not necessarily. But when they start talking about how they feel, like for example, they don't want to use the toilet because they don't like the facility, so they're not eating, and they're like, this is so important because how can I function if I'm going to your a session that you're leading and I'm not able to use the toilet? How can I concentrate on what you're telling me? So it's just a very powerful way of saying that every person in this school is a leader, and with that leadership responsibility, can inform um, decision making.
Okay, so can I just like take you back to like when did you first start using slicings? Were you like obviously that's the language that I used in the book, but were you using this approach before then or something similar to that?
Yeah, so I like the term slice team, so I've been using it. But originally, when we started doing our work with um, UNICEF to become a rights respecting school, and I've been working with them for about 15 years. What they argued is that we need to, one of the first things we do is you need to set up a steering group. And the steering group has to include a cross section of stakeholders.
Mm.
Okay. And presumably it's so to get a really authentic perspective of where we are as a school. Now, what I've done since, because I read your book when you gave me the draft. So what I did following that was just structure it a bit more than just as a meeting. So in preparation for, our next development as a rights respecting school, we looked at different aspects. We focused on behaviour at the school, and we organised our slice team into smaller slice teams. So imagine we had a large steering group of about 25 people. We put them into groups of five
Hmm.
and gave them a different aspect of the behaviour policy, and asked them to feed back on where they thought we currently are in terms of our strengths. And one group were meeting together to talk about the extent to which the adults are rights respecting and how they speak to children. And one little girl, she was only in year 3, actually came up with the observation that none of the rest of us had picked up on because we wouldn't have noticed it. And she said that the challenge she finds is when we get a supply teacher and no one's told them what it means to be in a right respecting school and
Mm.
what our values are. So she's sitting there, she didn't use these words, with this misalignment of what we are expecting from an adult and what they are expecting. So the next thing was, well, what do you think we could do? And so she came up with the idea that, well, they shouldn't be coming into a classroom until they have some sort of awareness of what that means in practice. So she thought we should design a leaflet for each new person coming to our school to say, this is what we are, these are the key things, this is how we talk to students. Um, and it was just a really simple but powerful example of why a slice team is so important, because not only are you coming up with solutions, first you're seeing things that others may not see or have not seen. The problem in typical hierarchical institutions, which most schools are, is they can feel threatened by because I was doing a presentation to head teachers in Sheffield last week, and I said to them some of the stuff I'm going to talk about you might not agree with, but some of them were so fixed in the thought that how can you give agency to teachers to work collaboratively to make decisions in the best interests of the students? And I said, how can you afford not to? So it's difficult. It's easy for me talking from a perspective here um, about a values-led curriculum and pupil voice at the centre, when in a lot of places it's exact opposite. And when you're writing about polycrisis, if you've got all of these things that schools are currently being hit by, the pressures, and they're continuing to manage those pressures within a culture of power, compliance, and control, it's actually, for me, it's making the situation worse. And the other thing is there's a recognition amongst some people, particularly at secondary school, is it's got nothing to do with what the kid thinks. It's what's what they think got to do with it.
Yeah.
Um, and the social mobility chair arguing that maybe we're listening to kids too much, and inclusion is going to be a problem because it's going to stop people learning. So there's so much out there that I think we can work with and we need to do, but it's going to take time.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for that. That's really just that's such a rich example, the year three girl. Can you think of any other examples of ways in which using slices have impacted or have shaped school policy? Perhaps not necessarily
Yeah,
just including pupils, but
yeah, yeah.
other
So
people.
we've just had a slice team downstairs, which we put together as an ad hoc because we just wanted leaders, office staff, um, support staff, teachers. And what we did is we were we're doing our evaluation because we're going for the next accreditation with right respect in schools. And the richness of dialogue, it was a half one, 35, 40 minutes to get people's different perspectives on where we are in relation to pupil engagement, in terms of impact within the school and impact beyond in terms of the community. And there was no other way where we would have had it recorded. The different things that we've done in terms of PE, physical health, music, the different things we've done in terms of participation in music, and mental health. So you've got a music lead, PE lead, mental health lead, parent, a learning coach, teacher, and getting this collective rich. Again, you use the word rich because sometimes it feels like it's the head perspective person who should know everything, but it's the extent to which that you're not only taking a wide range of opinions, but you're using those opinions to inform policy in a authentic way, not in a checklist or I'm going to give you the itinerary and you're all going to go along with it. Actually getting people to think about what's the best way in order for us to share this perspective.
Mm,
So it's as big as um, coming together to form a teaching and learning policy or even an attendance policy. Our attendance, because some people think we're mad, so we don't have an attendance lead, we have an attendance team. And that team is a slice team because it includes people with different perspectives or different roles within the school rather than it being fixed or attached as a label.
yeah, yeah. I've often thought that even if it's just like two people, like the school leadership positions, it's just so lonely leadership if there's only one of you who's supposed to be responsible for this. And for me personally, just like the importance of dialogue, just like it just gets your thoughts rolling, doesn't it, when you're talking about
Yeah.
something? But absolutely to blow it out as wide as a slice. So it sounds like you use slices a lot, and that it's not just that you have sort of like in the book I talk about just like, you know, if you're looking at this one big sizable chunk of school improvement, let's say it's around attendance or whatever it might be, behavior or something, and we're going to make a slicing, we're going to do this quite sort of slow procedural process of looking at this and working towards some outcome. But it sounds like you use them in a more sort of, you used the word ad hoc way just now.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
So we do it for uh, key areas of school improvement. So for example, and I don't tend to have more than four. So this is our school learning plans, right? So I'm looking at reviewing this for next year.
Can you
Okay.
hold it up a bit?
Yeah.
Oh, got
So
it.
that this first one is,
Mm.
let's say for example, there's one in relation to reading, all right? Because we want to improve reading outcomes. To ensure that the teaching of reading skills is consistently strong so that all children, particularly developing readers, make excellent progress. That objective was not led by the English lead or a reading lead or a senior leader. It's led by a slice team. And sometimes we ask people to volunteer for a team if it's a big area. That is an example of where we're implementing over time, over a year, an element of school improvement that we want to lead to quality change. But equally, if we're looking on a particular aspect of practice, like incidents in the playground, we will then use a ad hoc slice team. The other thing that we do is we have a parent forum once every half term, which is completely informal, where there's no commitment. You don't have to come every time, where parents come and attend, and we might have a team presenting on an element of school practice and improvement, and that those parents will then give their feedback in terms of what they think, their perspectives, how their children are feeling about certain things. And so you're sort of getting the quality of a slice team without them formally working towards a fixed area of school improvement like we did with the reading.
Mm. Wow, amazing. And so like one thing that people often struggle with is like finding the time. Like the not just like, I mean, obviously time is such a finite resource in schools anyway, but in terms of like getting multiple people off timetable together, or if it's after school, like what have you found with that? How logistically easy or hard do you find it to assemble a slice team?
Right. So the thing is that ideally it should not be after school or before school.
Yeah.
So today's one was during the school day. All right. So we don't make them onerous meetings. Today there was only three things we were looking at. Right. We wanted to look at our evaluation in terms of what I'd given as a starting point, and I wanted everybody to scribble on their copy in their pairs and threes and feed that back, so I got a more richer perspective. I wanted to discuss the itinerary for the accreditation visit and who might be involved in that and get their perspective on that. And third, we were beginning to think what we wanted to include on our PowerPoint presentation. So essentially, we only needed a slice team altogether for about 25, 30 minutes. But the culture in our school is that this will happen regularly. And so it involves a teacher leaving their class for 30 minutes with either we have a lot of student teachers, so we're committed to teacher training. We might ask a learning coach in the year group to take, so people can quickly step in for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, because
Okay.
that's part of the
Oh,
culture
that's
of
really
the school.
interesting.
So someone from the office came along, someone just had to cover the front desk. And the other thing is that if you've got an authentic model of teacher staff empowerment and agency and leadership is distributed, people see themselves as leaders who are going to be part of decision making and have to be flexible. So it's baked in to the culture. And you don't need we don't use the term SLT. We've never used it. We don't use the term. There's no one more senior than anybody else. It's just we're all contributing to this ecosystem. We're all dependent on each other.
Mm.
So you've created a very different culture in which people genuinely want to be included, um, to impact upon all aspects of policy and practice.
Yeah. That's amazing. I would like to ask you a question about like the use of the inclusion of pupils in slice teams, because it's something that I advocate, and some of the schools that I've worked with have gone down that route, but many of them don't. And I think it's partly because they sort of think about like lost learning time, and they're like, if we're taking them out of lessons. Partly, I think it's like, if you're looking at something like behavior, or if there's an issue where there's potentially a bit contentious, or where there's not yet agreement within the school staff about what a way forward, that they don't really want to they don't feel comfortable lifting the bonnet on that uncertainty and sort of exposing their own lack of certitude,
Mm.
to the kids, and then perhaps to whoever the kids talk to, parents or the kids and what have you. What are your thoughts on that? And what would you say to anybody who was perhaps feeling a bit hesitant about including kids in a size team?
I think you can't afford not to look under the bonnet because you're not going to see what is needed. And I'm just really open with the kids to say every day is an opportunity to improve. Every day is an opportunity to learn. Um, and we want to know what you're really thinking. And I just think that the outcome is going to be just so much more richer because you've got a true perspective. I think there's a danger that we've assumed that this is going fine, or we've assumed there's not a problem with this.
Yeah.
Um, and the one thing that I do know, whenever I go into a school, and this is my third school that I've led, where I say we're going to become a right respecting school, you will have more children coming forward there'll be more behaviour incidents in the next 3 months. And they say, why? I said, because children are going to be brave enough to tell you what they're really thinking and feeling. And that's okay. And that does make adults feel uncomfortable. But I can't afford to assume. And there's nearly 1,000 kids at this school. In a school like this, a new thing can emerge any week. And if I don't really know how the children are feeling, or what they're worried about, or what their concerns are, or what behaviour is, then I I'm not really going to be able to have the best idea of how to move forward. So they are essential to the slice team. And the other thing is, when you've got children who can give their opinions, sometimes some people assume that children are bad. That if they wouldn't want to learn if they didn't want to learn. I mean, I'll give you an example. I did assembly this morning with year 5 and 6, right? Our children come into assembly by themselves. So when Ofsted came here, and this was a double RI school, it's the worst school in the local authority, most disadvantaged ward, nearly 100 Romanian Roma traveller children. And when I said to the Ofsted inspector, I said, how are you going to judge our behaviour? Let me tell you, you don't know the starting points. But our children come into assembly by themselves. She goes, what do you mean? I said, they don't need an adult to police them when they can bring themselves into assembly. And she'd never seen it before. So why can't we think that if we give children that agency, they'll actually rise to that responsibility and they'll actually work harder because they see their discretionary effort
Mm.
going further? I just think when I explain that to some people, they just find it too difficult to understand. And I can tell you today, and we hadn't had an assembly, Monday morning assembly, for a couple of weeks because of sports day and other such things. 250, 260 children came into the assembly, including children with special needs, by themselves, led by peers, in silence. And then the adults came in after. And they have to come in without talking either, because any expectation we have for our children, we set the same for
Yeah, great. Because the kids pick up on that really quickly, don't they? And they're like,
yeah.
wait, this is a rigged game.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. And there's this philosophy that the only way we're going to get kids to behave is to control them,
Yeah.
police them. And there's also a little bit of prejudice in terms of the more disadvantaged you are, the more you need to be policed, or your curriculum needs to be narrowed. That's what you deserve.
Yeah.
Actually, and which is what I said to the kids in assembly. I said, it's no good being a good reader or writer or mathematician if you're not also a good person and good citizen. And we are extremely mobile in this school. So there's only 59% stability. So children left today and children joined. They're not going to understand expectations of behavior from behavior policy. They're gonna see the expectations from the children around them.
Yeah.
The children are moving around the school with respect and are given the responsibility to look after the environment rather than being policed and sanctioned. Because if you're a rights respecting school, kids can't miss their play because they have a right to leisure. If I'm dysregulated and I wasn't behaving well, I need to be outside for 15 minutes. So me missing my play is not an effective sanction. You can ask a child to just stay back for 3 minutes to have a quick conversation to see how they're feeling, but you can't get them to miss their play. And once you've communicated that to everybody, it then has to be replicated with every adult and child to the institution. And during that Ofsted inspection, one of the inspectors, bearing in mind we're a double RI school, said she'd never come across such a happy group of staff. So why have we got a recruitment and retention problem in our education system? I mean, if I go on Twitter and said kids should enjoy coming to school, people think I'm mad. But staff should enjoy coming to school. Kids should enjoy coming to school.
Yeah. Yeah. We're a long way away from where we need to be. Hey. So,
Yeah.
so I've got a couple more questions on slice teams. One of them is just a catch-all, really, which is like, is there anything else on this topic of slice teams that we haven't talked about today that you think is worth sharing?
I think where there's a reluctance of pupil voice, I think that you need to fight through that barrier. The other thing that I would share is what a sense of empowerment, agency, and esteem it gives to a midday assistant,
Right.
or a parent who hasn't been to a school in this country to be asked, "What do you think? What's your perspective?" It gives a sense of well-being. So, I believe that it can't be tokenism. It can't be, let's tick this box. We've got a team of different people. We asked you if you've already decided. And that's the thing where people are saying we can't have the students because we're not sure ourselves. Well, that's the whole point of asking them. I mean, you are responsible for making the decision, but it would be a much more informed decision if you've got those breadths of viewpoints. And don't underestimate that schools are supposed to be there for the students. So we need to know what those students are thinking. And that even then goes to the point in time in your classroom on a day-to-day basis, the balance in your classroom, because we use a dialogic teaching approach. So everything is fitting into this philosophy of slice teams, the balance between teacher talk and pupil talk. So our lessons resemble more like university seminars in which we spend a lot of time, starting from reception, 4 years old. And so this concept of developing oracy, thinking skills, metacognition.
Nice. And the last one is just like a pitch question. Like if you had to pitch the idea of a slice team to a school leader who's never heard of it, what would your pitch be? Why should they invest their time and energy thinking about using this idea?
I think for school leaders, slice team, the use of a slice team is immeasurable because school leaders are constantly grappling with challenges. They write school improvement plans. They want to initiate quality change, and we can always initiate change. We can bring in a new scheme. Sometimes teachers call it initiative overload. But I think if you want really authentic quality change, you need to firstly gain a really rich perspective of where your school is currently at, and a slice team will provide that. And then, I mean, others like Matthew Sides talk about the diversity of thinking within a team. I think a slice team provides a diversity of thought, which then can identify key actions that can be considered in moving forward with an aspect of school improvement that a single leader or a leadership team would not be able to come up with themselves. Hopefully, that's a succinct pitch.
Yeah, that's absolutely perfect, and it's totally spot on, man. Like that's I think about that all the time. This whole idea of groupthink and how school leaders are all school leaders, and
Yeah,
they might be brilliant, accomplished people. They might have PhDs and qualifications, like letters after their name, and all of that. But
yeah,
they are all like they are therefore quite a narrow group of people. And
yeah,
as brilliant as and accomplished as they may be, they are not early career teachers. They're not a
yeah,
kid with dyslexia. They're
yeah.
not a classroom assistant working part time. They're not able to imagine what those perspectives are as they come to bear on, for example, the new reading scheme. And so,
And if you've got a really empowered staff team or a group of critical thinkers, change makers, however you want to describe it, you then develop a really dynamic staff team that people don't wait around for the decisions to go up the hierarchy and come back down again. People are proactive, they're reflective, they take action, they make decisions. They'll have that conversation with the parent, they'll make that phone call regarding that child, they'll do the home visit. And this makes a massive difference. And just for example, where I'm sitting right now, you've been a double R school, double RI school, which means by definition you are a stuck school. Now, for us to go, and we don't do it for Ofsted, but for us to go from double RI to outstanding in personal development, behaviour and attitudes, leadership management requires more than one single hero leader. It requires every member of the staff team to be fully committed. And what slice teams, it's just a single aspect. Like on its own, if it doesn't change the wider culture, it's only going to have limited impact. But if it's accompanied by a wider sense of empowerment, distributed leadership, agency, staff agency, you create a really dynamic, reflexive learning community, which is able to improve, rapidly.